Oh my gosh, everything is going wrong right now. I'm supposed to be filming this video, and literally as I'm about to film this video, I got hit with the news that Saw 11 has been canceled. Everything is going wrong right now. Can't have anything nice in life. They want to cancel one of my favorite movies franchises. Oh my god, bro. Oh my god. Okay, I guess we should actually film this video instead of me complaining. Hey everyone, how's it going? How am I doing? I am upset, but that doesn't matter. Today we are talking about the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, obviously, we are so close to that Nintendo Direct where we're going to learn more information about what the Nintendo Switch 2 is. And I expect within that Nintendo Direct, we're going to learn more about the games, obviously the release date for the system, and we're going to learn probably the launch lineup within that time period of the Direct happening. So what I thought would be really cool is if we predict what games are coming out within the launch day. Because after doing some extensive research, figuring out things here, I think I have come up with the perfect list of games that are going to come out within that Nintendo Switch 2 launch day, which I'm still thinking is June 5th, but a lot of people are speculating that might be May 15th now. However, I'm team June 5th right now, and let's just jump into the predictions I have, because I think I have some pretty good predictions here. All right, let's get probably the most obvious one out of the way. I feel like it's safe to say that Mario Kart 9, assuming it's called that, I believe that that is our launch title for the Nintendo Switch 2. This is obviously a pretty big launch title to have for the system, as Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is the best-selling Nintendo Switch game. I think it's over 60 million units, which is absolutely crazy to think about. But this is obviously going to be a big title for Nintendo, as all of the Mario Kart fans have been waiting for a brand new Mario Kart. Even when Mario Kart 8 Deluxe came out on the Switch, fans were eagerly waiting for that next entry in the series, and we never got a new entry on the Nintendo Switch. I think part of the reason was because Mario Kart 8 Deluxe sold so well that Nintendo was like, why do we invest the money into a new version of Mario Kart for this console if this is selling as much as it is and is the best selling in the entries of the series? And I believe that Mario Kart 9 is going to be doing crazy numbers for the Nintendo Switch 2. In fact, I think with the fact that Nintendo is launching with Mario Kart 9 is going to help Nintendo Switch 2 be one of their biggest success yet. I'm very interested to see what this game is going to be, but I am very much expecting it to be Nintendo's big launch title that they'll be promoting the Switch 2 with. Similar to Breath of the Wild, if you saw the marketing that they did with Breath of the Wild and Nintendo Switch. But I am throwing a curveball here. I am expecting another major first-party Nintendo game to be coming out with the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, I do think it's possible that it could be like a brand new IP of some sort that's really supporting the brand new Joy-Cons with its functionality with the mouse features and whatever other features that are in those Joy-Cons that we don't know about yet. That could be happening, but I am also thinking that Nintendo could be saving that type of game for probably later in the year. Something kind of like a summer release or, you know, maybe a fall release game. I think what's going to come out instead of a game supporting the Joy-Cons is going to be Metroid Prime 4. We're going to find out at the Nintendo Direct that this game is actually a cross-hybrid release for Nintendo Switch 1 and Switch 2. This is something that I have been saying since 2017 when this game was revealed. I said that Prime 4 was going to end up being a game that's going to be a cross-release. I called it, and I ended up being correct. Everyone called me crazy back in 2017, and when we found out the game got canceled in 2020, was that when we found out? No, it was 2019. Everyone was like, no, this is still going to come to the Switch. And then as years went by, people started to realize, this might actually be a cross-release title. And guess what? I was correct. This is where we're going to find out. You know, props to me. And I'm just saying, I was like one of the first people that said this back in 2017. And if you guys in the comments are saying that you thought this too, you're lying, because all of y'all were against me in 2017. I expect that this game is probably not going to run very well on Switch 1, and they're going to promote the fact that the Switch 2 version is like the version to own the definitive way to play it. Again, similar to how Breath of the Wild's marketing was, they were like, oh, it's coming to Wii U, but it's also coming to Switch, and you'll be able to see the clear difference of the best performance, and just the game was meant for Switch 2. And that's all that I'm expecting from Nintendo. Like I said, they could be having a second release that's like a new IP focusing on the Joy-Cons, kind of like a 1-2 switch. Or we could see 3 games from Nintendo, and that third game being like a 1-2 switch type of game for the Switch 2. But I don't think we're going to see anything like that until later in the year. So now we're going to jump into third-party predictions of what's coming out onto the Switch 2 day one. This next one is a big one that I think will be coming to the Switch 2. I think the Switch 2 version was already in development. They just couldn't announce that it was coming to the Switch 2. And that is Monster Hunter Wilds. This game has been a big success on every platform, and it has always been a gigantic success on Nintendo platforms. And it was noticeable that this did not come to the Switch, probably because it doesn't run well on the Switch, and because they had the Switch 2 version in mind. I think having a game like this, portable like that, is going to do big numbers for both Capcom and Nintendo, and we are definitely going to see Monster Hunter Wilds at some point this year on the Switch 2, if it is not a launch title for the system. However, I think this game has always been in development with the other consoles simultaneously, because Capcom is such a big developer. Nintendo is going to want their support for the Switch 2, and it just makes sense to have Monster Hunter on the Switch 2 right now. The next one that I feel is probably coming out day one, because I think the big thing that they are going to promote with that Nintendo Direct is the fact that the Switch 2 is a much more powerful system. They're going to show you games that was considered impossible for the Switch 1 running perfect on the Switch 2. And I think one of the games that they're really going to highlight at the Nintendo Direct is going to be Red Dead Redemption 2. In fact, I think that is going to be a day one release for the Nintendo Switch 2. I know there was a lot of rumors back in the day that Rockstar Games was trying to get Red Dead 2 on the Switch 1. It just wasn't working out well. And I think they put that development onto the Switch 2. And this game is already done, I bet. And I don't know what they're going to do, how they're going to promote Red Dead 2, but I feel like they will attempt to make a statement of Red Dead 2 running on the Switch 2 by showing that there is a 60 frames per second mode into the game. Obviously, we don't know what the system's going to be in terms of power. We are speculating that it is going to be probably a little bit more powerful than a PS4, maybe closer to like a Series S type of level. But if Rockstar was able to get that running at 60 frames per second, on the Switch 2, day one buy, people are going to be going crazy on that, especially as a launch title. I think a lot of games are going to be coming out launch day for the Switch 2, and to me, with everything with Red Dead Redemption 2, with how successful Red Dead 1 was on Switch 1, it makes sense to have Red Dead 2 on the Switch 2, and I think it is going to be a launch title, because if you look at history, the last Nintendo Switch had one of the worst launch histories, in my opinion, of all of gaming. It had like 5 games. I think they're going to try to change that and have so much third party come out that day one release, and just Red Dead 2 seems like the perfect title to have for the Switch 2 day one. All right, this next one is also a pretty big release that isn't even on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. And if they can get this on Switch 2, I think this is going to be, again, a statement about this system. And I know that EA is going to want this game on the Switch 2, considering how popular its other game was on Switch 1. That game is Split Fiction. Split Fiction is the perfect game to be on a Nintendo platform, and the Switch 2 as a day one release I think makes the most sense. With how popular this game is already, I feel like EA is going to want to jump onto the Nintendo Switch 2 bandwagon very fast, because they had a very late start into the Nintendo Switch 1, and even then, by the time they got into it, it was just too late to put other games on it. They obviously put It Takes Two on Switch 1, and that game sold absolutely phenomenal on Nintendo, because that's just the perfect Nintendo game right there on the platform. And having Split Fiction on the Switch 2, again, perfect game to be on a Nintendo platform. That's going to do big numbers just like it already has on all these other platforms. I feel like this is the perfect game to have come out on the Nintendo Switch 2 release date, whenever that is. June 5th is what I'm thinking. But that to me makes the most sense, and I think it's going to look really good and run amazing on Switch 2. All right, so I'm putting 2 titles down for this. I don't think both of them are coming out day one. I think whatever comes out is going to be later in the year. I think one of these 2 is coming day one though, and that is Atlas. Atlas is obviously a big publisher now for the Switch. They're going to want to be a day one supporter of the Switch 2 because, again, a lot of these companies did not believe in the Switch 1. They didn't think it was going to be successful, and if they were a part of the development of putting games on there, they didn't go too crazy. And Atlas is going to want to have all their games showing up on the Switch 2 day one. And I think one of the games that could be a launch title for this system is either going to be Persona 3 Reload or Metaphor. Now, I feel like the one to me that makes the most sense to come out day one is probably Persona 3 Reload. I think that Atlas would love to have something like that within the Nintendo Switch 2 launch lineup, and it just makes sense for it to be Persona because Persona is obviously more popular than something like Metaphor, which I think both of these games are coming to the Switch 2. I just don't see them coming out within the same day of the system because I feel like Persona 3 and Metaphor could be hurting each other in terms of sell numbers. I feel like the typical gamer is going to look at those 2 games and only pick one of them. And I think the obvious one that people will pick, even though the game sucks, is Persona 3 Reload. That's why I'm saying Metaphor to me makes more sense as like a holiday release of this year. Or maybe even closer than that. I don't see both Metaphor and Persona 3 coming to the Switch 2 on the same day as the system coming out. I think only one of those games are going to be there. But I could be wrong, and Atlas is just like, we don't care. We want you to have both of these games day one. Buy them, $70 please. I don't know. I'm putting this as like a maybe. I don't know if I'm too confident in this one, but I do know how popular this game is. And the developers have already said that they are looking to be on the Switch 2. And that's Marvel Rivals. Marvel Rivals is obviously one of the most popular free games right now. And that game, I don't even think is on PS4 or Xbox One because just the hardware limitations. And the Switch 2 could be kind of like hardware limitations there because if it's only on PS5, Series X, PC, I know that the Switch 2 is not going to be as powerful as a PS5, so it's just like, I don't know if this game is going to be able to come to the Switch 2, but the fact that they're looking into it makes me think that, hey, this is a strong possibility, and this would be a big deal to have on the Switch 2 for launch day. I feel like the fact that they have come out and said that makes me think that the game is already running on Switch 2, because why would they come out and say that if there wasn't a possibility of it coming to Switch 2? I feel like they would have wanted to just flat out be like, yeah, no, it's not coming to the Switch 2. I feel like the way that they worded things makes me think that Marvel Rivals is already running on the Switch 2, and that is, again, a big title to have on a Nintendo platform since it's not even on Nintendo platforms right now. And that is obviously a great game too. Free game, you know, I think that could be a launch title, if not a launch title, later in the year. So we know this next game is coming to Nintendo platforms at some point due to Microsoft's whole lawsuit when buying Activision. And that game that we're talking about is Call of Duty. Now, Call of Duty is kind of a weird one when it comes to Nintendo platforms. We thought we were getting something Call of Duty last year because if y'all looked around the time that we had the last Nintendo Direct, Call of Duty tweeted something about it. They were like, ooh, eyeballs emoji. And then they quickly deleted it. And then there was no Call of Duty at that Nintendo Direct. It was very confusing, and we never got an answer to why Call of Duty retweeted the Nintendo Direct and then quote tweeted with the eyeballs. Very interesting. And it had me thinking that maybe Call of Duty, they were trying to get it on Nintendo Switch. They were doing their absolute best, and they're just like, we can't do this. We're canceling this version. It's just not going to work out for us. Or maybe they were working on some sort of Modern Warfare remastered coming to the Switch. I don't know. Either way, we know due to the Activision lawsuit that Xbox promised that Call of Duty would be coming to PlayStation still. And if you look in the documents of that lawsuit, they even said that it's going to come to Nintendo. And obviously the Switch just cannot handle it right now. So the Switch 2 is going to be where these Call of Duty games are heading. And I think Black Ops 6 being a launch day title for the Switch 2 makes very much sense. Call of Duty has a history of being launch day console titles for other systems out there. And I think the new version for Switch 2 just makes the most sense. That would do really big numbers because Call of Duty hasn't been on a Nintendo platform since the Wii U. Am I correct? Yeah, because it wasn't on the Switch. And even with the Wii U, the last one that we got was like Call of Duty Ghosts, I think. So we haven't seen Call of Duty on Nintendo for like 13 years. So that is going to do really big numbers for Xbox, Activision, and it just makes sense to have that be a day one title for the Switch 2. I still want to know why Call of Duty made that tweet. I'm like so confused. That's like gotta be one of the biggest mysteries of the Nintendo Switch. Why did Call of Duty retweet that specific Nintendo Direct? Because there wasn't even anything Microsoft at that Nintendo Direct, if I recall correctly. Such a big mystery. And then the last title that I think will be a part of the Nintendo Switch 2 launch lineup, which there's probably going to be more than what I'm saying here, but I feel like this list of games I'm very confident in, and that game is going to be Elden Ring. We already know that Elden Ring is probably coming to the Switch day one. Well, we know the Switch 2 version is definitely existing, because out of nowhere, Nintendo was just talking about all the developers that are working from them at like an investors meeting, and all these companies that are currently making things for the Switch or just in general Nintendo consoles. And one of those companies was From Software. It was kind of weird to put that on there because I think they only did Dark Souls Remastered. Did they even? Yeah, I think they did that. And that's all we got from them for the Switch. So why are they talking about them making something right now? They're obviously very heavily into Elden Ring right now, and there's that brand new game coming out that's like an online game of Elden Ring. I think there's a good chance we'll see that come out later in the year for the Switch 2. But I think you're going to get the brand new Elden Ring with all the DLC or whatever it was that came out that everyone got mad being nominated for the Game of the Year because it was a DLC expansion. Whatever that thing was, we're getting it all into one cartridge, Elden Ring. It's going to be like a updated version for Switch 2. It's going to look really nice. That's probably going to be a game that gets heavily promoted for the Nintendo Switch 2. And this Nintendo Direct is where we're going to find out of its existence. And I would not be surprised if they make an amiibo for Elden Ring 2. I'm just throwing that out there because they did it for Dark Souls. But I don't, with it being a launch title, I don't know if they care about amiibo right now. Because if they're making amiibo, they're probably going to do like a Mario Kart amiibo lineup. Oh my gosh, dude, that would be sick. Imagine Mario Kart amiibos. Guys, that is my list of games that I think is coming to the Nintendo Switch 2. I want to hear from you. What do you think is your launch lineup predictions? I'm expecting about 10, 11 games, probably some eShop exclusive stuff from indie developers, that type of stuff. But in terms of third party and first party, that's what I'm expecting. The only thing that I could potentially see is Nintendo coming out with 3 games rather than 2. With 2 of those being like the big hits, and then that third game being like a 1-2 switch type of clone game, something that you would think is packed in to the Switch 2. I want to hear everything y'all have to say in the comments down below. Don't forget, we are doing a 24-hour live stream leading up to the Nintendo Direct on April Fool's Day. It's not an actual April Fool's, we're actually doing this. Hope to see y'all there, and y'all have a wonderful night, because I am talking for way too much. / that subscribe button. Check out the Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.